want to talk about domination? Kyle Larson absolutely delivered on that. And what was not an eventful day at Homestead-Miami Speedway for the 8th race of the NASCAR playoffs. Not much to go off of, but like I said, Kyle Larson was just flat out dominating. No matter what you threw at him, somehow he was able to just get away. He had an average running position of like 1.4, 1.5, led 199 of 267 laps, and went on to win for the third time in 2022, scoring his 19th career Cup Series victory. Now, there were some moments that took place during the race. On lap 30, you had JettMDK, who was replacing Bubba Wallace, started in the 3rd or 4th position, but on lap 30, got loose, spun off of turn number 2, and backed it into the inside wall just a little bit. You also had playoff contender Chase Briscoe in lap 164, gets loose in turn 1, smacks it into the outside wall, either breaks a toe link or a rear control arm in the car. The team was capable of fixing it, but in order to fix it, they had to go behind the wall. If you go behind the wall, you're out of the race. So Briscoe would end up finishing dead last. Considering he was below the cut line coming into this race, he now was in a must-win situation basically. And he also had a moment in stage 3 on lap 211 when Blaney spun on the access road in turns 1 and 2. That would end up bringing out a caution in the middle of pit road cycle on the final rounds of pit stops. They then had this moment between Larson and Martin Truex Jr. Now, Truex Jr. was the only driver that was capable of somewhat challenging Kyle Larson, and he was leading the race for a good amount of time. After that last pit stop when Blaney spun, it kind of screwed up Larson's strategy. Truex benefited from that, and he ended up becoming the new race leader while Larson was back in the 4th, 5th position. But then a caution comes out when Tyler Reddick gets loose and slams into the inside wall. Pretty hard contact. Luckily, he was able to get out of the car under his own power, but that brought out another round of pit stops. Coming onto pit road, Truex gets punted by Kyle Larson, sends him sliding sideways, enters his pit box backwards, and because of that, he ends up starting, I believe, in mid-pack. Somehow, because he has such a strong car, was able to rebound from mid-pack to end up finishing in 6th place. He was like a rocket in those final few laps, but didn't have enough time to catch up to Larson. Now, with this incident, I believe it was a racing deal. You could put blame on both of them. Truex, it looked like Truex was very late to coming to his pit stop. But maybe, you know, when he did get off the brakes, Larson did have a little bit of time to maybe expect it, but wasn't able to anticipate it, runs into the back of him, sends Truex spinning. I think you also have to consider the fact that this took place during the sunset when the sun is literally beaming on the driver's eye. So because of that, they can't really see everything so clearly. On top of that, you have all this dust, debris that's filling up your windshield. Makes it difficult to see those little things like that on pit road. So I think Truex missing his pit box, at the very least, was very late into turning his pit box. He didn't merge onto his pit box. Like when you see some drivers, they start off right on the outside, then they merge to the middle, and then they go into the pit box. Truex didn't do that. He was on the outside and then turned immediately. Larson was expecting him, ran into the back of him. I think it was just more of a racing deal. Larson, you could put part blame on Larson, part blame on Truex. Yeah, that was really it. You also had some contenders like Ross Chastain and AJ Allmendinger. Allmendinger had a fantastic car, especially on restarts early on in the race. Those two were flying at the beginning on that final 10 or so laps, and they were able to somewhat give Larson a bit of a challenge, but Larson was just too strong. He was able to open up to about a 1.4, 1.5 second lead at the finish line. In fact, there was a point in time for majority of the race where Larson, on William Byron or a driver in 2nd place, whoever it was, he was able to open up to an 8 to 10 second gap. It was amazing how fast his car was. Anyways, let's take a look at the results. So Larson wins, Chastain in 2nd, Allmendinger in 3rd, Austin Dillon sneaks up for a 4th place finish, and Brad Keselowski was really strong in this race. Always in the top 10 for virtually the entire race, you know, was in around the 7th, 8th position, had a fantastic run, 6th place with Martin Truex Jr, but should have finished 2nd or could have been a race winner. 7th is Denny Hamlin. Hamlin did not have a good car. He was outside the top 10 for majority of the race, but was able to get away with some pit strategy moves, was able to take the lead late in the race on a restart, but didn't have the car capable of contending for a win, so was for 7th place. Kevin Harvick in 8th. Kyle Busch, a quiet 9th place finish for him. He was outside the top 10 the entire day, somehow managed to sneak in a 9th place finish, and Daniel Suarez in 10th. Christopher Bell 11th, William Byron in 12th. Byron, he was a driver that could have finished maybe even in the top 5. Unfortunately, on the last green flag round of pit stops, he had a horrible pit stop cycle, First, I believe the tires weren't tightly secured, then the car stalled. Just everything was a mess from start to finish. Ends up finishing in 12th place. Buescher, Elliott just was non-existent. I mean, he had a top 10 car, but just you didn't hear much from him the entire race. And Stenhouse Jr. rounds up the top 15. Other notables like Ryan Blaney finishes 17th. Logano 18th. Logano, don't know what happened with him, but I had a top 10-ish car, but was in contention for a majority of the race. 19th, Austin Cindric and Harrison Burton rounds out the top 20. Then you got Eric Almirola 21st, Gibbs 22nd, Cole Custer once again outside the top 20 again. Noah Gragson 25th place. I don't know what happened with him. A lot of people had him circled in because of his win the previous night in the Xfinity Series, that he'd be somewhat of a contender, but was just out the entire race. John Nemechek finishes 27th. Haley 28th, had an issue on pit road. Eric Jones 30th. And then you see the remaining drivers, Tyler Reddick 35th and Chase Briscoe 36th. And here's a look at the playoff grid with one race to go next weekend in Martinsville. Logano still the only one locked in. Chastain plus 19, Elliott plus 11, and Byron has a 5-point gap ahead of Denny Hamlin. Blaney minus 18, Bell minus 33, and Chase Briscoe minus 44. Really, Bell and Briscoe, not in race win situations or must win situations, but they about have to win if they want to make it to Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. As for this race for the casual viewer was not entertaining. I thought it was entertaining because, you know, the pit strategy was somewhat interesting. There were also battles. There were battles. TV did not do a good job of portraying the battles, because if you look on the NASCAR.com app and you can look at all of the drivers' onboard cameras, and that's what I did, and you saw battles. There were battles on the racetrack, just TV didn't do a good job at broadcasting them, but there were battles outside of the top 5. You know, there were points in time where it was really spread out. I'm not going to deny that. It wasn't the most entertaining race, but there were battles that happened, especially the restarts were very exciting to watch. And that battle near the end between Chastain and Allmendinger was awesome to watch. Side by side, slipping and sliding different lanes every single lap. Those two put on a very entertaining battle at the very end. But I'll be honest, it wasn't the most exciting Homestead race. I give this maybe 6, 7 out of 10. It wasn't, well, no, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Not a 7, I would give it a 6 out of 10. It wasn't the most entertaining Homestead race. It had its moments, had some good battles, but it was, you know, it did get a bit strung out for a good amount of the race. I believe, you know, stage 2, it was pretty strung out. So still was pretty dull, had a lot of dull moments, but it did also have some pretty entertaining racing in the middle of the pack. But yeah, I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. Wasn't the best, had its moments, but it was, you have to admit that it was not as exciting as a lot of people anticipated when you look at a track like Homestead and the racing it produces, but still had its battles. I was very shocked by how Allmendinger ran. I did not expect him to have the run he had. He is going to be a very surprising driver for 2023. When he races full time in the Cup Series, not a lot of people are going to be expecting him to run well, or probably going to be even thinking about him, but I'm pretty sure him, Justin Haley, all of colleague, they're going to surprise a lot of people in 2023. Brad Keselowski in the 6th car, I mean, once again, they're getting better. You're seeing it every single race. I mean, since Bristol, I think, was when you really started to see, okay, you starting to see something develop. I think RFK, they're going to be a surprise team come 2023. We know Buescher, we know he can win when he won at Bristol, and that 6th car, gaining some more momentum, finish was in the top 10, top 6 for a majority of the race. So they're gaining speed. They're getting there. And yeah, not much to talk about in this one. I mean, not, you know, a bit surprising when you see drivers like Kyle Busch, Joe Logano not be a factor. But I mean, really, when you think about it, I mean, it was just Larson dominating. I mean, there's really not much to go off of. Surprising to see some of the big names not be up towards the front, like I mentioned with Busch, you know, Logano, Elliott. Was a bit surprising, but outside of that, there's really not much to talk about for this race. Could have been better, but there were some battles. But those are my thoughts from this race. What are your thoughts on this race? Tell me in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Congratulations to Kyle Larson, your winner at Homestead-Miami Speedway.